Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Responsive Weekly. I'm Megan Donahue from Virtuous, and joining me today from Raised Donors is Stephen Boudreau. Hi, Stephen.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. So today we're talking about online giving experiences and particularly donation pages. And so many of you have submitted your pages for review. We're really grateful for your vulnerability and willingness to participate and play along. And we're excited to dig into them. We'll get to as many as we can, but of course, as always, we've got that 30-minute time limit. If this is your first time at the Responsive Weekly, here's how it works. Today's a little different than some days, but the basics remain the same. We have a conversation, and another conversation is happening in the chat box. So I see already we've got a lot of words coming in to describe your giving experience in the chat. I see a whole range of stuff, Stephen. Some people are happy, some people are not.
I was wondering what these words meant. I was like, I feel like I missed the joke and the punchline keeps coming in. But now
I suppose that's not great if you're like, hey, I'm on the show, and the chat says, blah, it's okay. No, we're describing the online giving experience at our organizations in one word.
Gotcha. Well, if I can chime in with something, before we start looking at pages, I'm noticing most of the words that are coming through are relatively negative. And I think that it's okay to feel that way. But also, as we look at pages and as we talk about ways that maybe they could be improved, all of this is being said and done with humility. Like everything is about, we start with best practices, but what we ultimately trust is testing. And so I like to encourage people to experiment, to really try things that maybe they aren't doing now, that are easy wins, low-hanging fruit. You don't have to switch out your donation platform and go to Raised Donors or any other platform. Like, let's just start with where you're at and see how we can improve things. But it's all done with an air of humility. So I already feel like the people submitting their ideas are already coming in with that attitude. But also, let's just see. Let's talk about those pages, and hopefully you'll leave this meeting feeling a little more positive than I'm seeing right now in the chat room.
Yeah, and something you pointed out last time you were here, Stephen, that really stuck with me is that there's not like this perfect ideal donation page somewhere where we never have to improve anything and we just like, yeah, we've now achieved donation page perfection. Like that's not the goal.
Yeah, and even what might work this month might not work as well next month. It's not just one test and we've learned something forever. But there's an old story, like if you open up if we were to open up a donation page, any donation page right now and say, hey, is this page optimized? There is not an answer to that you can give just by looking at it. Optimization is a process. And ultimately what we're optimizing isn't just so much what's on the screen. Ultimately what we're optimizing are the thought sequences of a donor. And so it's really not so much, is it the most beautiful page? Is it perfect? Does it make sense? That's where we start. Does it make sense? And also, does it compel me? Does it motivate me to give? So it's funny being in technology that I'm not focusing on technology as the lead in, but really the message is what starts. And technology, the more invisible it is, the better. I always tell people, if your donors never know or hear or understand what Raised Donors is, then we're doing a good job. It's the moment that friction is introduced or, something's broken or something doesn't work well. That's where technology starts to be a barrier. So the first way to remove the barrier is by having clarity in that kind of value proposition that you're giving.
Absolutely. All right, shall we take a look at some pages?
Just to do it.
Right in.
So how are we going to do this? I forget.
All right, if you want to share your screen, or I can, whichever.
Either way is fine with me. I don't have the
page in front of me. And we had our spreadsheet of pages to choose from.
Oh, yeah, I suppose let me pull those up here.
Hold on just a sec.
No.
I'm going to hide the tab that has people's email addresses.
Oh, yeah.
We respect your privacy here on the Responsive Weekly.
How about you steer it and I'll just talk about the pages.
Sounds good. All right. Well, I'm pulling that up. Can you give us kind of, when you're looking at a donation page, what's the first thing you are looking at? Like, where are the first places you go?
I look at the content first. What's the headline? What are, do we have more than a couple sentences of content? And then more importantly, like, what does that content talk about? Some of the pitfalls that organizations fall into, just because it's natural, not because it's bad. Is the content organizational focused or is it donor focused? It's kind of like, am I talking about myself or am I talking about the donor? Because ultimately we're asking the donor to make a gift, we're asking them to make a step of trust. And if it's all about, hey, this is our urgent need, or this is what we're doing with the donations, this is the amazing thing we're doing, that's not, at least typically from testing, as effective a message as, hey, this is the impact your gift makes. Here's how you can participate. Here's how you can change lives. Here's how you can rescue, animals. Like, this is your involvement as a donor is kind of the key. And when we talk too much about the organization, we're creating friction, mental friction in the process before we even get to the form, which may or may not be a good form or a bad form. But so really, I'll probably hit it over and over again. The message.
All right, I'm ready with a page to share.
All right, let's do it.
Here we go.
Who gets to go first?
All right, so we're starting with open door mission.
All right, let me bring this up to my screen.
Page visible?
Yeah, I can see it. All right, so this is a tip that'll probably come up over and over again, just because it's just a common pitfall. But right away up at the top, we've got our logo and we've got our navigation. And there's nothing technically wrong with having your navigation. But think of them, every one of those links is an exit point. It's an ejection button to leave the donation form. So very simple. I talked about low-hanging fruit. What are things we can do now without blowing everything up? If I was managing this side, I'd say, okay, let's create a template for our donation form that just has our logo at the top. We don't need to be giving them reasons to leave. The point of a donation form is to capture a donation, is to get a donor to give a gift. And so when we give them ways to leave, we are inviting them to do the opposite of what we want them to do. They can always hit the back button and promise you they will. If you look at conversion rates, something like 96, 97% of people do hit the back button. But we don't need to be giving them those exit points. Keep them focused. Kind of, again, we're optimizing that mental sequence. So yeah, that would be the first thing I would advise here. Now for the copy itself, help the hurting and homeless. That's great. Right away we're telling them what they can do. You could evaluate saying something like, your gift helps rescue people that are hurting and homeless. Just, personalizing it a little more. I like this. I'm just kind of being a little nitpicky at this point. But anyway, if we scroll down the form a little, let's just actually look at the form and see what it looks like. All right. Something we could change right away is the very first question is, see if your employer will match your donation. Again, this is something that doesn't necessarily even need to be part of the form. A lot of times this can be done after the gift on the thank you page. But if you are going to include it on the gift, you are introducing mental friction to the process. I came to give a gift, and now the very first question is like, hey, where do you work? So it's just kind of introducing an unexpected level of friction. So it's not always whether a question is good or bad or if it should be there. Sometimes it's like where it is. Like, I came to give a gift, but now it's like, hey, let me see your W-2. It's like, hey, hold on a second. So that would be an advice, either put it at the bottom of the form or if it's possible, put it on your thank you page. All this, this looks pretty good. There's something called field friction, like field number. This feels kind of complicated because it's all bunched up. You might want to separate it into groups where you have like the amount, the billing information, payment information, and maybe step those out, step 1, step 2, step 3. This just feels like a lot. But this is not terrible. Don't take my advice as this is the worst thing I've ever seen. But we're just talking about ways to optimize. So those would be some tips I would say. Everything else I think that we would say would be just be nitpicking. Oh wait, sorry. Continue down there at the bottom.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move to the next one. Thanks for submitting that.
Conservation Nation.
Okay. So this form itself looks pretty good. The form. Now, what do you think I'm going to say about this form, Megan?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Honestly.
well, there is an assumption that a lot of fundraisers make that is proven to be incorrect, and that is that when I arrive at the donation form, I'm ready to give.
Oh,
I clicked here, so obviously I'm going to give.
I was totally looking at it with that bias. I didn't
I
even think about
have
that.
not been given a reason, or at least very much of a reason to give. I have a title and one line, which, you know what, if you start to see conversion rates shoot through the roof, hey, keep it. But if you're seeing, conversion rates pretty low or declining, I would say right away, we have the opportunity to just add some value. Tell people, remind them, just because they land on your donation page doesn't mean they're going to give or they're ready to give. So add that value. So right away, your donation directly impacts the world's most critical wildlife projects. I think that's great. How about a compelling image of some of that, and then some just think of a paragraph or two that really give a compelling reason how their gift is going to make that impact. It's one thing to say, hey, it directly impacts the world's most critical wildlife projects. We could say something like, hey, the beluga whales population, like whatever it is, you could start telling a story about what your gift does. And now when I get to how often would you like to donate, I'm feeling a little more primed. I'm feeling a little more ready to give. Does that help? Is that good, Megan?
Yeah,
I think so.
absolutely. I think that's calls attention to a larger truth about how if we make assumptions about our donors, we're often wrong. I mean, this is a thing we've talked about in various contexts over the last couple of weeks about donor retention, is when you're not looking at data and you're just thinking I think that's what people are here to do and what they would like.
Yeah.
Often we miss things.
Well, and think about this too. The less compelling my message is, the more heavy the cost and the friction of the form is going to feel. So if I've already highly motivated them, I've given them a lot of value. This is what your gift is going to do. This is what's going to happen. Here's the story of all of the different animals we've saved or all of the homeless people we've helped. Okay, if I get to the form and ask for my employer, all right, I'm willing to give because I've gotten a lot of value. That's a lower cost. But if I'm just like, hey, donate now, and then I start asking them things on the form that maybe I didn't expect, I'm much less primed. I'm much more likely to hit that eject button. And when we're talking about online fundraising, we're talking about 0.5% increase. A percent increase in your conversion rate equates to a lot of volume of money. It's just, you've got to be thinking about those thought sequences. Just put yourself in the donor's chair as best you can. And honestly, talk to your donors, talk to prospective donors, ask them, hey, how does this strike you? You don't always have to guess. You just have to talk to people.
Yeah. I think remembering that we can do that. We can ask the question. We can get some data is important. All right. Checking for questions. Someone asked the question of, a couple of people asked why, if there was any particular rhyme or reason to having a $1 donation option. In our last gift form we looked at had predetermined gift values and they included $1. Is there any reason particularly to do that? Or if the person who is here from that organization would like to tell us about their thought process, that would be cool too.
Yeah, that sounds like more of a strategic question.
So there's not a secret strategy that all people who make giving forms know, Stephen. That's included.
We did have a client once on the platform set up a $0 option. Not that you can technically do a $0 donation, but it was something like they were attaching value with every amount. It's like, hey, make no donation today and let all the bald eagles die. Or whatever it was. It was kind of, I didn't really like the approach, but sometimes some people have a strategy for that. I think in this case, I have no idea why they would do that.
Cool. Let's take a look at another one.
Happy to do so.
Great. All right. Sunrise Senior Living.
Yeah, so right away we've got the navigation. I would suggest, if just don't scroll just yet. Like a very simple change, you can make this. Everything from living options all the way over, even the donate button, just gone. Just have the logo there. We don't need these ejection points.
Mhm.
All right, now we get here, we have the image, financial support. Our donors choose to support Sunrise financially for a variety of reasons. Personal. That's fine, but it's also like the very next thing is we have another supporting statement, a reason to give. Someone remember life of love and meaningful gift. This is just, if you're thinking about how a donor might be reading this, I don't have like a compelling story I'm following. I've kind of got this bullet point here and this bullet point here. We want to get to the value of why I should give, why I, Stephen, would want to give a gift here. So I think it's not so much that this is bad messaging. It's just, let's just stick to the story we want to tell. Financial support, our donors choose to support. Well, I'm the donor. Why would I support? Like, talk to me a little more directly. Make it personal, especially because this already, like, it's a retirement community. There's already, we're talking about a human being, probably someone that is very close to me, someone that I love, someone that I trust, or maybe a place that took care of someone that I love. There's so much fodder there to really connect with the donor. I would hone the story rather than critique this as bad. I would just say, let's tighten it up. Well, let's keep going. Again, this kind of falls in the same line. I don't necessarily think this is bad, but I would just tighten up the story and what is the most valuable thing for the donor to hear right now to help motivate a gift. And I think that comes back to telling the story of how my gift would impact the retirement community. Maybe talk about how the gifts have been used recently, or someone who is in the community in a way that this kind of helped them enjoy this chapter of their life. Just, what am I giving to? What am I giving to when I'm giving to the Sunrise retirement community? All right, and then we keep going down. Okay.
Ways to give, and then.
Yeah, let's go ahead and click donate online here, because I think this is probably what they want us to see. Okay, the journey here is what we just saw. I think that whole page could be tightened up significantly, but let's just imagine that the reason I got here was that I hit the donate button on the homepage, or maybe I hit an email, I got an email and I came here. Now I'm here. I would say that we would want a little more Sunrise retirement community. I'm not going to repeat myself. We need more value, but even here, like, am I giving to Give Butter or am I giving to Sunrise? See if that can be changed or fixed. Because this doesn't, I just hit the donate button and it doesn't look anything like where I just came from. In fact, the first thing I see is Give Butter versus Sunrise retirement community. So we're just creating mental friction. We're giving people a lot of reason to bail on this process. But the good news is I've listed a lot of things that can change, but nothing I've listed is, it requires you to eject off of this Give Butter platform. There's probably options within this platform for you to change the colors and add your logo. That simple change would reduce mental friction. Here where it says, thank you for your generosity and support, I'm going to assume that we can put, that's customizable content. Put some information there about why, because chances are when someone hits the donate button, they're going to bypass the previous page. Now that we've talked through it, I'm going to assume this is where they land. So everything that I've said about every other page applies here. This one's a little more stark just because it feels like I'm giving to Give Butter. That would be my biggest concern here. I wouldn't want so much Give Butter on the page. It's kind of like what I said earlier. The technology should be more transparent, because all we've done by introducing the logo of the vendor is introduce friction, and very obvious friction. I mean, the color, like these aren't even the colors that I saw on the previous page. Right away, I'm confused. So that's my advice there.
Excellent. All right. International Elephant Foundation. Some good images.
Great.
Animal
Great
organizations always have such a leg up on compelling imagery.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. You could argue that it's too big, but nah, it's an elephant.
It's an elephant.
It's supposed to be big.
Even it's a literal elephant.
All right, so let's talk about a few positives here before we talk about things we might want to change. Having the Guide Star Platinum, the Best in America, the the member of the organization, all that is really strong. A lot of times people might advise you to have that closer to the donate button, where you hit donate now, versus here on the side. But this is all good. Anytime you have this, you're already a leg up, because you're just reinforcing confidence, reinforcing security. You're just validating the fact that, hey, I want to give a gift to this organization. So that is great. Again, by the donate button's probably better, but here's great. So over here on the left, donation is not a great headline. Just imagine if the form didn't have that there. Would it be any worse or better? No, it wouldn't be fine, but it's a missed opportunity. So that's what I'm saying. Like, let's talk. We just saw this beautiful picture of an elephant. Let's talk about what our gift has to do with elephants. So leading with all financial donations to IEF or a 501c3, we don't need to lead with that. That's good to have on the page somewhere. Also, ideally down by the donate button, because it's reinforcing confidence, but it's not reinforcing why I should give, which is ultimately the question people are weighing when they look at your donation form. They're evaluating the value of keeping their money versus giving it to you. So I'm here. I like elephants. Let's talk about how this organization helps elephants. So that's what we get into with the second line. So let's lead with that. Again, if you can introduce stories, that's better. But even if not, I like where this is going with talking about the donors and what their gift makes. So down here, the donation amount of $35 or more, you get this mask. This is an incentive offer. So sometimes people experiment. Sometimes this works for some organizations. Sometimes it doesn't. The only thing I'll add here is the kind of this incentive offer. One nice feature that helps donors sometimes is to give them the option to not request the gift. So you have the option to receive it. Somebody might be like, okay, I want to give you a gift of $35 or more, but maximize the donation. Don't send me the gift. That sometimes reinforces confidence that the organization is thinking about the donor, but they're also thinking about being good stewards. What else here? The notes and comments. I might want to put that below getting the payment method. Getting the payment method is an essential step. Putting all this other stuff before that. I'm not going to say it's good or bad. I'm just going to say that in our customers, a lot of times they experiment with putting the payment first or the payment last. Typically having it, I'm going to say it's probably 50-50, but the donation notes and comments I would put at the end. Scroll down just a little bit more. All right. Yeah, okay. Well, the one thing that I have seen is asking the billing details earlier in the process is typically better. I'm giving you my name, I'm telling you who I am. The form feels a little long, but that's only, I think, because we're putting everything out there. We're putting comments, we're putting tribute gift, incentive offer. So it's just every feature you have, it's like you have them turned on. You might want to experiment with turning the comments off or turning the incentive offer off, but this page it has room for improvement, definitely. But I would focus, if I was going to change one thing, it would be the copy. Up where it says donation and the paragraph, that's what I would change. The form itself, I know we talked a lot about it, but I would just focus on that, and that would be a win. So what's next?
All right, we are just zipping through time. It goes so quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Just to clarify a point, Stephen, so you were talking about where we have these incentive gifts. What I heard you say is that's a thing to experiment with, that there's not a best practice per se of it's always a good idea or it creates too much confusion, but rather...
Which one? Sorry?
Adding incentive.
Oh, no, I think generally that's an organization by organization kind of strategic approach. But if you do offer incentive offers, I would experiment, with offering versus not offering and seeing how your donor base responds. I only bring that up because it's just another decision they have to make. I came to donate to the International Elephant Foundation, and every donor is going to be different. Some people will see that and go, oh, that's nice for $35. That's a great way to try and experiment driving your average gift size up. But then on the other hand, just like any question, Asking for your first name is a level of friction. I'm not saying friction is always bad, and we have to introduce asking questions, but it's an unexpected thing. Oh, I didn't know I was going to have to decide whether I want a mask or not. I don't want a mask. Like, that's what I'm talking about. I think it's best to have the option for the donor to say, I don't want the gift, rather than, oh, I have to get the gift and now I have to give you my shipping address. Give them the option to say, no, thank you. That's what I'm saying, in a rambly sort of way.
Yeah. And that brings an interesting question too about other things on forms like email signups, things like joining our newsletter, follow us on social media, do this other thing. Do you think the donation form is a spot for those checkboxes, or?
That's a great question. I would say your general donation page. So when I say general donation page, I'm talking about someone goes to your website, and in this case, they hit that red donate button, or maybe it's pink, up in the right corner. Your general donation page is a little different than a campaign donation page. So a general donation page is a little more broad. So if you have different maybe funds that you can attribute gifts to, like, hey, I want to give to the general fund, or I want to give specifically to the building fund, or whatever it is. That's a great place for it. The general donation page, we don't know that much about the audience. So in that case, it's all right to ask for tribute gifts or just incentive, and basically anything you want. This doesn't mean that you can't optimize it. But a campaign, so I email an audience, I know a little bit more about them. We want as few choices as possible. We're trying to make that process as streamlined as possible. So even if you do ask for them to subscribe to something, make it easy. Make it easy to understand. That's the key. You want to optimize those thought sequences, because the moment that I have to pause and think, we're risking them saying no. Because if you think about a donation form as a sequence of decisions, we want all the answers to be yes, yes, yes. First name, last name, yes. Email, yes. Phone number, yes. Social security number. The moment I hit a no, I could bail in the process and be gone. So that's where you're weighing. How much friction am I willing to put into the process? Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes it clear. All right, I want to make sure we have time for some questions, but before we do, with our 3 minutes we have left, before we do, Stephen, if people really loved watching you take apart donation pages, is there an upcoming opportunity where they could do more of that?
That didn't sound rehearsed. Yes. In fact, we've had so much fun doing this on the Responsive Weekly. We're going to start doing this twice a month over on the raisedonors.com website. So we're going to launch that next week. So if you sent over some pages and we didn't evaluate them, or if you have one or different ones you want to send over, we're going to start doing this every couple of weeks, just as an opportunity to not only let people see their pages, talk through them, and see how we can improve them, but just to continue to sort of stand for the idea of optimization, to stand for the idea of experimentation, to not be afraid to try things, because even if you try things and they don't work, you've learned something. It's just that constant process of learning. A lot of times we think, oh, I'm going to read a book and learn about Abraham Lincoln's life, and that's where I learned. It's like, no, we can learn just by looking at our donation page and seeing if people give and if they don't give. So that's the idea. We're going to tear down pages every other week, but the idea is to take lessons out and learn about how to do better, better, and better.
Yes, and I'll put all of that in the Responsive Weekly next week on your Tuesday email, so you should get that info. Speaking of upcoming opportunities, in 1 minute, if you want more Zoom, our friends from Plenty are doing a workshop on self-care for fundraisers. I know we've talked a lot about burnout, so I'm going to drop that Zoom link in the chat so you can pop over there if you'd like to for the next half hour. That's probably where I'll be headed to. Stephen, thank you so much for coming on and
my pleasure.
Showing us so many different things. Thank you to everyone who sent pages. Again, if you sent one and it didn't get reviewed this time, we're doing this a lot more in the future, so we'll keep you posted. Thanks everyone for Thank you everyone for spending the time with us at the Responsive Weekly. We're so glad you're here. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.